I think I'm ready. I think I'm good to go.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how rusty do you feel right now? You know, we're on a schedule with recording.
Are we?
Kinda. We've been pretty good, like plus minus a week or something. And yet I feel rustier than ever every time we do this.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit behind compared to our usual schedule because, we both got ill.
Yeah.
It wasn't COVID.
Good.
Well, I don't know about that because it knocked me out for a week. Like, I couldn't think properly. It had all the downsides of COVID, but without the validation.
There is like a bit of like, oh, it's COVID and everybody just nods in understanding, isn't it?
Yeah. And like, I know there are other illnesses out there. It's not like when COVID arrived, all the other illnesses felt so inadequate by comparison that they just vanished out of existence, right? So I maybe had regular flu, right? I don't know. But I felt guilty not working because the little test was telling me, you're fine, mate.
I feel like also COVID is exempt from the man flu. Any other flu, you get man flu labeled.
Exactly.
Which, you know, maybe correctly so. I do not know. But yeah, I feel like you're right. When you can say, I have COVID, everybody goes, oh yeah, you do your thing. You recover quickly.
Yes. So my startup idea, and you can invest if you want, is a lateral flow test for everything. So like, you get your 2 red stripes if
any liquid hits the stick.
Well, no. If you were ill enough to justifiably feel sorry for yourself and lie on your sofa. That's the rule. Right.
So it's lateral flow for fragile masculinity.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like it. I'll invest.
I guess it is a man flu or a person flu. Says that just tells you, mate, you're ill. You're properly ill. Go. Just take the day off. Go play PlayStation. Guilt-free. That's what I want.
That seems, I want that in my life as well. Ship it.
Good. Shall we talk about the web?
No, we should do an intro. You wanted to make this more professional. You told me off last time.
Oh, we haven't even done the intro. Look, okay. Well, we've talked a bunch now. We've done, what, are we going to edit this?
No, we're going to play the music. Then people are going to hear me say, we should play the music now. Then we're going to play the music and then we do the intro. We do like some of the TV shows who like do like a little intro, then the actual theme plays and then it goes to like 2 weeks earlier and then the actual story starts. And I think that's what we should do. Rope them in with a nonsense anecdote. That's totally how podcasts work, right?
Fine. Roll the music.
Which music are you hearing in your head right now?
I heard my own voice going do 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 do, like it was just nondescript music. You know that system you're talking about, where like they would have a bit of the show and then the intro sequence, and then that pattern actually came about from US TV, where they would have an advert break straight after the intro.
Wow, that's brutal.
I know. I only learned this recently. I'm sure people in the US were aware of it, but Anyway, you are about to do a professional intro, and I'm not going to stop you any longer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to OTMT. My name is Surma.
My name is Jake.
And this is a podcast.
Yes, thanks Shopify for letting us do this, as usual. It's nice of them, isn't it? It's just nice.
It is nice.
Everyone's nice. Oh, shall we talk about the web now?
Yeah, why not? Let's go.
All right. So, I wanted to talk about the new stylable select element on the web. It's something we've all wanted for
20 years?
Years?
Yeah.
20 years, yeah. And it's actually close now, like for real. Like there's an implementation in Chrome Canary and it's ready for feedback. It's like, it's happening.
Ooh, but how stylable is stylable?
Like completely.
What?
I know. And it's not without its rough edges and weirdness, and I will get to those because it's fun. But I do think it's actually a great thing, and part of the story, the interesting part of the story for me, is all of the little lower level features that we've gotten along the way.
So they did the build. It's not just, like scrolling effects, boom, high level, nothing in between. You only can link to scrolling and do stuff, but they actually build the layers in between and I'm giving us those as well.
Exactly.
That is nice.
I've counted 10 lower level features that are usable outside of select, but are used by the select, or you would typically use it with this select thing and were probably created with it in mind. So
basically, because I know this work has been going on for a long time, the kind of hope I would have hearing that is that the select element is the guinea pig, and the next ones will maybe hopefully come about quicker because now the lower level primitives have already been designed and established.
Yes. Absolutely, and there's patterns that have been established.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to let you set the scene first.
Oh, I'll set the scene. The select element.
It selects things.
Look, we've all made one. You've seen them. We've coded them. You get a select element, and then inside you've got a bunch of options, potentially in opt groups, or not, whatever. The user presses the select button thing and picks an option. There is a multiple mode. You can put a multiple attribute on it, but no one uses it because it's shite.
Oh, I used to use it quite a lot.
Really?
Well, not I haven't done recently, but I know, because it suddenly turns from like a drop down into a box, and you can control or shift click multiple things, right?
Yeah, that's why it's rubbish, because you have to control or shift click, right? That's why no one uses it.
Now that you say that, I don't even know what that looks like on mobile.
Oh, that's a good point. I have no idea either, because no one uses it, because it's shite. Okay, but when it's a single select, it kind of renders like a drop down. And the advantage of the way it works, right, it's very declarative, is the user agent can render it however it wants. And, it tends to be rendered in a way that fits in with the operating system and with the device.
Yeah, infamously on iOS, you get that's still like one of the more skeuomorphic leftovers, where it's almost like on little wheel drums where you select the number or the option that you want.
Do they still do that?
Don't quote me on it, but I think so.
That's interesting. So, I mean, and on Android, it does show as a kind of full screen-ish overlay, right? But even on desktop, it looks like part of the OS, and the popover thing can escape the iframe it's in. It can even escape the browser window it's in. It's got these kind of superpowers by being sort of an operating system level kind of thing.
Yeah. And the fact that it is looking like the operating system is actually what people often dislike, because they have, a whole design system that somebody painstakingly designed and implemented, and then somebody wants a select, and they're like, well, can't do anything about that.
Do you want an ancient fact?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this should be like a recurring segment.
Grandpa Jake tells war stories from Browserland.
Yeah, let's go with that. Welcome to Grandpa Jake Tells Stories from Browserland. Excellent, cool. In Internet Explorer 6 and earlier, select elements were rendered by the operating system, not by the browser engine, and it was a separate rendering pass, right? Meaning select elements were on top of everything else, no matter what the Z index was.
Lovely.
Yeah. The only thing that could render on top of a select were these other things that kind of had this same second pass logic, one of which was an iframe, or rather the bits of the iframe that intersected with the select, the select wouldn't render there.
Mm-hmm.
But IE6 did have a code path to allow things to render on top of iframes. It was kind of that logic was just missing from select, but it was there for iframe.
Oh, it's like the rock, paper, scissors of rendering order.
Well, this is the thing. So if you wanted to render a div on top of a select, you were creating an overlay or a pop-up or something like that, what you would do is put an empty iframe behind the div to prevent the rendering of the select underneath.
That's brilliant. I love that so much.
That was another episode of Grandpa Jake's ancient browser stuff. I can't remember what we were calling it.
That is genuinely amazing. I love that.
So that's selects in general. The bad part is you can't control the styling because they're rendering differently everywhere. So how even would you? So if you wanted a drop down that looked slightly different, you were creating your own from scratch. Even if you just wanted an image inside the options, like a flag for a language select or whatever, some kind of icon. No, you were creating from scratch, and that included all of the accessibility stuff, which is really, really hard, and the keyboard interaction is really hard.
Well, no, you just don't do the accessibility stuff that we have seen in all the components people have written that do custom selects, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like instantly a world of awful because suddenly you are in get bounding Klein rec territory, absolute positioning, z-index fighting, and all that jazz just to get something that really, I just wanted an icon next to my drop-down option.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're right. That no one gets it right. So the Open UI group, they set out to solve this. They're going to create a select element that had all of the accessibility and interactions built in, but allowed for the full and predictable styling. And it's taken years, but we are nearly there.
Can't rush art.
Can't rush art. Can't rush browser standards. That's for sure. So like people who might have looked at this effort in the over the decade or whatever, they might have seen that it was going to be proposed as a new element, like custom select. I can't remember what it was, but that's dead. That's dead now. The new plan is to enhance the existing select element, and this is great because it means like these new fancy custom styled select things, they fall back to regular select.
Oh, but it also means that they have to kind of like shoehorn all the the all knobs and levers onto the existing syntax because it needs to gracefully degrade / progressively enhance.
Yes, so it means like your rich content in your options will just fall down to text content, which you have to be careful with. But I do think it's actually one of the impressive things about this effort is how they've managed to thread the needle.
For sure, it's very impressive.
Like, yeah, they've looked at what browsers will accept but ignore inside select and option elements and and made it work.
Amazing.
I think it's good. So you need an opt-in, right? Because you need a way to switch it from a normal select element into this whole new world.
Like Quirks mode.
Yeah. Do you know what? We're going to talk more about these little opt-in switches. I feel like they are multiplying on the platform. And yeah, I'm going to cover a few of them just in this episode. So if we think about a select, it's kind of two top level parts, right? There's a button, and that's the bit on the page that displays the currently selected option. But it's just a button, right? It doesn't look like an HTML button, but it's a thing you focus and a thing you press. It's a button.
Yeah.
If you give that, via the select element, in CSS, appearance base select, base-select, then it changes the mode and falls to a cross-browser version of that button that is like agreed styling.
Interesting. Is that the first occurrence of appearance, or did we have that somewhere else before?
Appearance is there already, but don't ask me what it does. It's one of those ones that has always been a bit of an enigma to me. Because there's like appearance none, and I don't know, it does something. I think it might be something that kind of appeared in like ancient days, and it's sort of in a standard now. Do you know what?
Wait, to double check, is this an attribute or a CSS property?
CSS property. So you can apply it to all your selects. So yeah, once you put that CSS on there, you get this like cross user agent, cross device button. That kind of looks like a very basic drop down select button that we all know and love. It's got the little arrow, it's got the selected item in it.
I instantly wish that they would have just called it base, because I would love to just do in my style sheet star appearance base, so that all UI controls will use that base appearance once we have it for every UI element.
And your intent there is exactly why they haven't done that.
Oh.
So if they said like, right, star appearance base means reset all of the form controls, they're not going to ship that for all of the form controls straight away. So they're going to ship that with select, or whatever. But then that style is out there. And then when browsers come to do that for date picker or, the color picker or whatever, or some other control, they're going to ship and your page is going to change, and probably going to change in ways you don't want. So it prevents a sort of future compat problem.
As long as they ship something like that once every form element has a cross-browser standardized look.
I guess whether that will ever happen or not, because you can always add new form elements in the future. But I guess if they do that for all new form elements as well.
All new form elements should now have a cross-browser. I think that's really nice that now there is basically the signal like, we are gonna give every standardized interaction element a cross-browser agreed look. So you move away from it looks correct for the operating system, because I think the benefit of that was never really as big as maybe originally hoped. I could see, like in a world with, installable web apps, there was an element of it's nice that it looks like a native counterpart, but actually almost all apps decide their own button design. So I think, this is the better direction in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The other part of the select is the popover, like the thing that appears when you press the button and goes away when you select an option or press escape or whatever. So you need to opt into the standard rendering of that separately. And that is done via a pseudo element hanging off the select. So which is : picker, and then in open brackets within brackets, select. So it's kind of like a pseudo element function kind of thing. And again, this is for the same reason for, they don't want people saying like all pickers, I want all pickers to be base style. Like they want to force you to be saying, I want this to happen for select.
Right.
Yeah. And again, you do appearance base select on that. The nice thing about it being split is you can just opt into controlling the button and stick with the operating system picker. You cannot do it the other way around. You can't just opt into the picker without opting into the button.
That kind of makes sense, I suppose.
I guess it comes down to like, if you're just controlling the picker, I don't know. They probably have some good reasons for it. But yeah, fair enough. I'm fine with that. So let's talk about popover.
I was gonna ask, don't we have a popover element that recently got designed or something? Or am I making stuff up?
You are not making stuff up. It's a popover attribute.
Ah.
And so like almost every element can now have a popover attribute. I think it maybe is actually all elements, but it only really matters on elements that render. And that means it can be shown as a popover by calling .showPopover. That means it appears on top of everything else. And that uses another feature of the web platform called the top layer, which I think was originally created to support full screen elements, but it's since used by dialogue elements when they're in modal mode. We use it for view transitions, and popovers appear there as well. There's probably some other features too.
Right.
They come with like focus logic to control focus in expected ways, and you can use escape to close them and it returns focus. It's pretty smart.
And you have this anchor positioning as well to position the popover adjacent to a specific corner of another element or something?
Yes. So the popover bit, so I should say there's also on a button element, you can add a popover target, which means like clicking the button will toggle or show or hide. You can control that as well. Like that will control the popover, and that will also create an accessibility link between the button and the popover.
That's nice. Very good.
There's a great article by Hidde Vries and Scott O'Hara, which covers all of the accessibility stuff under the hood here, which I'll link to because it's really good. So those features are available cross-browser, like today. But you just mentioned anchoring, which, yes, like you want the popover to be linked to the button, typically, but which side of the button? Well, that's kind of down to you. And maybe you want it to, like, appear on the side that has the most space, or, like, favor one side, but if it would go out of view, flip it to another side. And yes, CSS anchor positioning gives you that capability. Only in Chrome right now, but it is unstable. And you can use that on any element. That's the nice thing. Like the popover stuff, the anchoring, like these are features that they don't have to have anything to do with Select, but it is the things that Select uses internally with sensible defaults, and you can modify them and use them separately.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. Really nice layering.
So any elements that you put inside the Select, they end up in the popover.
That makes sense.
Well, not just options, it means you can use divs as well to help with layout or, whatever.
So in this opt-in world, is then the popover just like basically an element and I can use, relative positioning, absolute positioning, all that jazz?
It will always be in the top layer. So giving it relative positioning isn't going to get you anything because everything is sort of...
If I wanted to arrange my select options in a circle.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. And whatever kind of layout you want, you can do there. So there is a downside to this, and like you get all of that CSS control, you get to do what you want with it, but because it's just in the top layer and because you have that control, it can't escape the iframe it's in, and it can't escape the browser window because that would be a security issue. Rendering stuff in another origin, or you're rendering stuff outside of the browser.
Right. I guess that makes sense, and I think the feasible workaround, which I assume is handled automatically, that, if the button with a popover is at the bottom end of the screen, the popover will open upwards rather than downwards. So it's really only the scenario that is now problematic. It wasn't problematic before if you have a tiny, tiny iframe.
Exactly. Or a tiny, tiny browser window or something like that. Yeah. And so CSS anchoring gives you that, preference of positioning, all of that you control in it, and there is sensible defaults. Yeah. So it's a kind of minor thing, but it is a notable difference between like the new world and the old select implementation. Option elements still represent your options, but they can contain rich content. So images, you can format the text, you can add divs to, hang styles off. You do whatever you want. There is a checked pseudo class on options, and by default that causes the before pseudo element to contain a tick. I think that might change. That's something that's like currently being discussed, but again, you can override all of that. Even if that is what lands in the user agent style sheet, you can override it to change something, be whatever.
So again, in my circular layout, how is keyboard input handled?
It is not. Well,
you get up and down, I suppose, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So you get the accessibility stuff for free, you get keyboard stuff for free, but you just get, up and down. So if you have arranged your items in a circle or in a grid or horizontally, which a lot of the demos are doing because it's cool and new, a lot of them don't work. Like you would have to go with JavaScript and like when left or right is pressed, when you're on this particular option, call focus on a particular different option.
I think it's fine. I think solving all of these things in one go is probably super hard. I think so the fact that you can select any option with a keyboard, that's the most important thing. The fact that it sometimes is visually unintuitive. Like I wouldn't say it doesn't work. It's just unintuitive to go up, down when you visually go left and right. Yeah,
that's a fair point. Like by default, you will be able to scroll through the items. It might just not be the most expected buttons that you will press.
And maybe at some point there is, CSS has this whole spatial navigation thing going on. Maybe that can be connected at some point, but I'm super happy that they are taking this approach for the first release of this, where you're just like, it works, and it is a massive leap to what it was before. So, it's good.
Yeah, I'll link to the effort, the previous effort for spatial navigation. There's a spec written, but I haven't looked at the spec, so I don't know anything about it. But I know it was done by LG folks, because of course they're on a TV and they've got up, down, left, right on a remote. So spatial navigation is really beneficial to them. So there was spec efforts, but it hasn't really been touched in I think 3 years. So so that's not one of the features we haven't got out of this. All right, that's the popover. The button. So once you've done the opt-in, you get this cross UA standard button that you can style, but you can do more. I said before that anything inside the select element appears in the popover. There is one exception to that rule, and that's if you put a button element as a direct child of the select. Then it becomes the button. Like the UA rendered one is gone, and just that button you've put in is the button now. Well done.
Oh, so that allows you to model the state change between is the popover open or closed.
Well, yes. So you can use the select open and closed pseudo classes for that, and then control your button within there to to flip like what the arrow position or some of the colors or whatever state. Yeah, that's all available to you. And those open and closed pseudo classes are a relatively new thing as well. I don't know if they were created directly for select. But they've been added to select for this. I think they were also on details.
I was going to say details must have had this, because that's... So you sounded like that wasn't the intention, that you can have basically one button look for open, one button look for closing. What is the intended use case behind replacing the original button with another button?
Well, it's just that you can do whatever you want with it.
Ah, okay.
Like, so with the previous one, like you've got it's the content that the UA comes up with, but sure, you can change like the background color, the border and all of that. But with this, you can put whatever text, images, blah, like just it's yours to do whatever you want with.
Right. I mean, it's really good flexibility. How do events work in that moment?
Well, you've still got the select element is there. So whether the button gets a click event or whether that's like stop propagation, stop immediately.
Because I'm thinking about, in Preact, if people put their on-click on one of the buttons rather than the surrounding select, or like only on one button and then they replace it, but then obviously the other button doesn't have a click listener.
Well, you shouldn't have to add a click listener to the button, and because there's no real call to, because the browser will automatically hook it up to the picker.
No, but maybe you want to do something in response to a click, right?
Oh yeah, so that should work. If you prevent default on the click, whether it stops the popover appearing or not, I don't know. It feels like it should. But yes, so I would expect you to get a click on the button, and then obviously it bubbles up to the select as well.
I guess I was asking if I put an on-click listener on the one button, and then this replace mechanism kicks in once it's open, I would have to add another click listener to the other button.
Oh, no, there's only one button. I think this is maybe where's the confusion.
Oh, yes, I think now I follow. So yeah, we should rewind what you were saying. Let me try and see if I understood it right now. You can put a button as a direct child of the select to take complete control of the look of the button. I understood that button only comes in action once the original button has been clicked.
Yes, that's where we got confused. No, it is just the thing that appears on the page. The default version of that is gone, and it is now just your button. Is it?
Right. So that's basically a special rule for if there is direct child button that is your signal as a developer. I want to take control of the select opener button myself.
Yes, exactly that. And are you ready for where things start to get really weird?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
There's a new element called selected option. All one word. Well, no spaces because it's a tag name. If you put one of those in your button element, it will receive a clone of the contents of the option element that's selected.
A clone of the option element that was selected. That is actually...
Well, the clone of the contents of the option element that's selected, yeah.
Yeah, that is actually kind of clever.
Yeah, so I have to do some verbal gymnastics here because it means we've got a selected option element and a selected option element. So I'm trying to find ways because there's the thing with the tag name selected option, and then there's the thing with the tag name option, which is selected.
That has the selected property set to true.
So excuse me while I sound not entirely human while I try and make the two sound very different. So yeah, it's a light DOM clone of the contents.
Interesting.
And so I said in previous episodes, it's a bit weird and unusual for elements to modify their own attributes in response to user interaction, but it does happen with dialogue and details. Like they both add and remove their open attribute. There's also the hidden attribute. If you set that to if found, that's an indication to the browser that if you control F and it thinks the content is inside that element, it will remove the hidden attribute automatically from that element. So, there are cases where browsers will modify elements themselves. It's just very rare and weird. But this takes it to a whole new level because it's a whole clone in the light DOM that's sort of dumped into this other element.
Yeah. I'm surprised that there wasn't... maybe there were attempts that didn't work out, but my immediate thought would have been slots, right? Like in Shadow DOM, but maybe we can have slots outside Shadow DOM because that would have also maybe made sense here.
So there isn't the concept of projecting an element into two places. And that's the problem we've got here, is because when you've selected an element and you open the select again, you're seeing that item in two places. You're seeing it in the popover and in the button.
That's true.
And there is the elements function in CSS, which only Firefox supports, which lets you create a bitmap copy of another element, but that means it can't be separately styled, whereas this full clone can be independently styled. It can receive its own events.
I was just going to say, it is actually quite flexible, almost elegant in that if an option is the selected one, you can style it separate. You can style the appearance of inside the select drop-down button thingy separately because it is now a full clone.
Exactly. But it gets funkier. The current plan, and this is under active discussion, is that if you modify the DOM of the option that's selected, it triggers the cloning steps again synchronously. So if you create a div and you put it in the option that's selected and you give it a class name and you give it some text and you change the inline style, that's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 modifications. So that's 4 times the entire contents of that option is cloned. and inserted into the selected option element, replacing whatever content was there. 4, whole clones.
Of course, you want to immediately argue it doesn't have to be synchronous, but I guess for certain logic, it might have to be.
Right, and that's one of the things they're discussing, like, should it be debounced? But things are sort of tending towards synchronous right now. But it also means that if you're animating something in the selected option using like GreenSock or Anime.js, whatever, these libraries, they modify the style object every frame, which is reflected to the style attribute, which is a DOM change, which is going to trigger the cloning operation every frame. And it's not just of the element you're modifying, it's everything in the option.
But animation is always performance footgun work. Like, people who do this need to know what they're doing, right? Like, I am firmly of the opinion to give sharp tools to developers, let them run with scissors.
Well, this is the thing. And if you were animating rotation and opacity, that's 2 writes to the style object, which is 2 writes to the style attribute. So that's 2 DOM modifications, which triggers the cloning algorithm twice per frame, and on it explodes, you know? Also, like, if you've got a CSS animation on an element, that starts when the element is like mounted, like when it's in the document. And if this thing is being recreated a lot, people like using React might have experienced this, the CSS animation will appear to reset because it's a new element.
Yes.
And if it's a custom element that's going to perform a fetch on construction or insert, like, this is going to be happening, you know, because of the clone. It's going to be happening time and time again.
I was going to ask, because, you know, what about, you know, old school animated GIFs or even, you know, video tags?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, you'll lose. And that's the thing. If any of the state is not represented by attributes, such as a canvas, such as the video playback position, then that's going to be lost. So, yeah, have fun. I think it's okay, the cloning thing, but I think the way it clones everything on any modification synchronously, one of those things needs to change. It's not quite right. I would prefer a pattern where if you modify something in the selected option, it should make the same change on its related clone.
Now, here's a curveball of doom. Remember a couple episodes ago when we were talking about VDOM in the browser?
Yes.
What if instead of doing a full clone and effectively overwriting the child tree, it would do a VDOM diff and actually only change the attributes and properties?
Yeah, that's a big curveball. I just think it would be simpler to say, like, it knows when it's cloned everything, and it can map, you know, the contents of the option to its clones. So if you edit an attribute in the selected option, it just sets the same attribute, the same name on the clone.
So, like, basically it replace the actions that are being done on one element to the other element, which is kind of what I was saying. It's just like I saw the bridge to, like, you know, VDOM diffing, which is the same effect, just more complicated. But yeah, we've
done this in Shopify, right? This is how Shopify extensions work, right? Like, something happens in we've got like a virtual DOM in a worker.
True.
It's not a virtual DOM in the React sense. It feels like a real DOM, but when you do stuff in there, it's replaying the actions somewhere else, like through a security layer.
Yes.
And so it's just, I think that's what should happen, you know?
And maybe it will, I suppose, in terms of, you know, with my very basic specking head on, a shallow, like, or a deep clone is much easier to spec right now when they're already trying to spec all the other stuff than also inventing, because that's not a thing anywhere on the platform, right?
No, I mean, this whole cloning thing is new anyway. I mean, cloning isn't new, but doing that on user interaction is new. But yes, there is an existing algorithm for cloning elements, so they're leaning really heavily on that. So it would be a lot more spec work to do the, you know, synchronizing the 2 trees, but it's not a lot. Like, I've written that code before. It's not, it's okay, you know. It's more than what they've got currently, but I think it would remove a foot gun. Maybe
it's a step 2.
Maybe.
You know, maybe that's something they do, let's post MVP kind of thing. I would understand if they did that, but
I would say the good news is, like, this is entirely opt-in. Like, using this selected option thing, like, you could say, well, I'm using React, so I'm just going to listen for the onChange event on the select, and I'm going to update the contents of my button, you know, and in that case, you're not limited to the DOM structure of the option. You can just, you know, you can do whatever you want, and it's fine. So, and I think that's probably what I would do if I was using a framework already, but whatever. It's nice that there is a non-JavaScript version there.
Yeah, and it's really nice that they have a pattern where it's opt-in. Like you can choose to do the selected option tag, or if you just don't have it, then none of this is a problem because you either don't want the selected option to be shown, which would be a bit odd, or you're taking matters into your own hand.
Exactly. But that's not all, right? Let's say you want your fancy new select to animate. So a basic thing for it to do would be to animate from height 0 to its full height. You could do this with a clip path, but let's say we're just going to animate the height so the box shadows and the borders do the right thing, whatever, and we'll optimize the layout so it's not too bad. You could slap a CSS animation on the popover element. CSS animations run when an element appears, so you could do that. But you can't animate to an intrinsic size in CSS. Like you can't animate to height auto. You can't animate to height min content or fit content or max content.
Wait, with CSS animations, if I just say just the only keyframe I specify is from?
Doesn't work.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it needs to be a number at the other end for it to work. Except now you can, and there is an opt-in, another opt-in. Are you ready? In CSS, if you do interpolate-size, allow -keywords, ding ding, that's it. and this one inherits, so you can just put it on root and be done with it. And now it just works. There's also calc size, which you can say like...
Wait, is that a CSS function or property or...
Yes. It is a CSS function.
Ah.
Right. And it means you can say like, give me auto height divided by 2 or multiplied by 2 or min content divided by 2.
That is lovely. Oh, that's going to be very useful in so many places.
Yes. So there's sort of two ways to do the same thing, like a simple way and then a way that lets you do maths.
That then together with clamp and all those shenanigans, is it always in reference to the element that it's being used on, or could I even do calc size on like from another element and use the result?
It's the same element, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. That makes sense.
Yeah. You might be able to, I guess you could do it relative to a parent by the parent setting a custom property, but...
I guess otherwise you have the same problem as they did with resize observer. You could have circular layout dependencies.
Yeah. That's always the problem, isn't it? This isn't a select feature again. Like you can use this everywhere. It's Chrome only right now, but it'll come to other browsers next year, I guess, maybe, hopefully. Who knows? Oh, okay. So what about the opposite side of the animation? So animating out. And this is always the harder one because of display none and it being removed from the top layer immediately.
Well, it's like you said, when a new element appears in the DOM, its CSS animations start playing. And so you can just basically put a fade in animation on an element. And once it's attached to the DOM, you know the animation will play. You can set its repeat to 1. You can listen to the transition or animation end event and just go about your life. But when you remove a DOM element from the tree, it's gone. There's no way to intercept that and keep it on screen to fade it out or anything like that.
Exactly. There's a solution for it as well. One way is view transitions, but if you're just making something display none and removing it from the top layer, there's another way of handling it. You can set a CSS animation or transition on the display property, which delays it applying if you're animating out. So you need to opt into this. It just works with animations. But with transitions, you need to use transition-behavior, allow-discrete, which allows discrete values to transition. It's on all discrete values, but...
Wait, I thought discrete values could already transition. They just flip at 50%.
No, that's how it works with animations.
Oh.
They don't work with transitions until you flip this bit and then...
Flip the bit.
Flip that bit. But when something is transitioning to display none, it converts to display none at the very end, but it becomes inert during the whole period.
Very good.
So that means that screen readers, like keyboard, mouse, like it's gone. So that avoids the accessibility issues and like means you can't double click on a button inside that thing that you've kind of told to go away. And this is probably the last feature I got in to web standards before I left Google. I had to get testimony from a bunch of framework developers to say that this is important and this is the kind of like this would be a foot gun if it's not done. But yes, that is one of the features that has landed.
I mean, that's a really good improvement. The only thing I wish there was that there's some way to say, like, if a DOM element gets removed, remove it from the JavaScript facing API, but keep it around until the animation is done. So basically, if a framework just removes an element, then just the CSS animation can play.
You're pretending like I never created view transitions, Sama, actually.
But those are just for transitioning views, isn't it?
But that was one of the problems we aimed to sort there, is like, how can you animate the thing that isn't there anymore? Right. So that's, yeah. That was the solution to that, was to use screenshots of the old thing. Here's
my confession. I have not used view transitions. I have not written any. Mate. I think you're breaking up with me.
I think I am. Yeah. No, I forgive you. I think like my confession is like, now that we've got cross-document view transitions, I kept meaning to add them to like my blog and stuff, and I just haven't found the time. So, but yeah, whatever. Okay, back to the problem. We haven't solved the full problem because we've still got that issue of it disappearing off the top layer. So the solution to that is to set a transition on this new CSS property called overlay. And that is a way of kind of delaying it disappearing from the top layer. It kind of pretends like overlay has a value of top layer, but you're not allowed to set this yourself.
Wait, did I get the problem right? The ring is like when I'm closing my custom select, it just poofs goes away. And we will obviously want to have an opportunity to make it smoothly go away to the developer's liking.
So you need to keep display around for longer, but you also need to keep it in the top layer for longer. This problem also exists with the dialog element. So yes, it's kind of pretend property like that lets you set something into the top layer, except you're not allowed to set it in the top layer, but you can put it in a transition which keeps this user agent set value top layer around for a bit longer. It's a bit hacky, but it does work.
It feels odd, but I guess it solves the problem. But it's limited to things in the top layer. I can't just use the same thing on elements anywhere else on the page.
So with this display property, you can use it on any element. Yeah, that works on anything, and it's in Chrome and Safari now. But this extra one that does the top layer thing, that's Chrome only right now. And yes, that's only really useful for this select element thing. It's useful for popovers, and it's useful for dialogue.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Final bit. I sort of described it as like we're doing an animation in, but we're having to use transition to make something transition out. And the reason for that is because like if you want something to animate just when it appears, like that's not a transition because it's in that state already. Mm-hmm. Whereas animations do let you do that. Something appears, do your animation. But they've also added a way to make this work for CSS transitions. And that's of benefit because it means that if the transition in is interrupted, like it can, skip some of the transition out. It can kind of start it halfway through or whatever to make it kind of a smooth transition. That's one of the nice benefits of CSS transitions. So they added @starting style, which is a block, which lets you, for a selector, say, pretend that it had these styles before it was created, And so if that has a transition applied to it, when the thing appears, it's going to transition from those starting styles to its actual styles.
I feel like I love the problem. I love that they made a solution. I'm not sure I love this specific solution syntactically, but you know what? In the end, like I don't have a better solution at hand. So, and again, I can use this on any element, right? Like I can define a transition now that plays when I add an element to the tree, not just an animation. That's really cool.
Yeah, I agree that there's so much new syntax is being chucked at CSS. It's kind of growing faster syntactically than JavaScript, it feels like. Yeah, and it's difficult to keep up with. But yeah, it's a solution to the problem. And yeah, you can use it everywhere, but it is useful for select. So that's it, really. Like, we're almost in a position to create these custom select things. People should play with it and give feedback.
Yeah, I'm genuinely quite excited to look at some... I'm sure you will have some demos to link to that I can look at in Chrome Canary or something.
Yes, I'll link to all of that.
Because I want to dig into that code and get a bit familiar with all the individual primitives. Because what I do think is really, really nice that they didn't just, here's a stylable select, but they were like, what is missing across the platform that we can then compose to yield a stylable select element? And yeah, that deserves applause. That's really cool that they went about it this way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's 10 general features, right? We got popovers, buttons that can like activate popovers, and they're also working on like general activation, like general declarative, click this button, it makes this other thing do a thing, whatever. CSS anchor positioning, the open and close pseudo elements, transitioning, animating to keyword sizes like height auto, calculations involving those keyword sizes, transitioning to discrete values like, display none, that kind of thing, animating display with auto inert, animating the overlay for the top layer thing, and this starting style. That's 10 features that are kind of like all part of making custom selects work, but you can use them elsewhere.
It's a pretty big flex for standards land.
Yeah. Well, it feels like the right way, right? Like it's like, yeah, rather than just, as you said, creating a general select thing that has all of this magic in it. It's like, no, like most of the magic can be explained by other features.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. That's really good.
That's all I got. That's it. That's the content.
I mean, you say like that wasn't a lot. I feel like you have explained 10 features, so I'm gonna have to sit down and digest.
Well, there you go. Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah. Should we all have a lie down?
Yeah. Let's have a lie down.
All right then. Okay. Well, there's nothing else to say other than
happy next time.
Bye. Hitting the stop button.